Hey everyone, hey and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchmen. This is an irregular series, we read a lot of comic books on this show. We're used to arcs, we're used to getting issues regularly, following the story. We're not like that, unfortunately, here. We're fairly inconsistent, but in a consistent way, I think. And here we're doing Watchmen, of course. If you're listening to issue 4 of this, then you aren't new. This is one of my favourite issues as well. We're going to be going through, as we always do, the story, the narratives, theories, art, just an appreciation of Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, which is just one of the greatest pieces of fiction ever created, no doubt. And one of the joys of doing this show is not only doing it with Watchmen, it's doing it with a co-host as well. Def, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I don't know why you keep ringing me once every couple of weeks to talk about the Watchmen, but yeah, I really enjoy our phone calls.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird relationship we have. But I mean, like,
it's weird you just ring me up and go, "Oh, hey, do you want to talk about Watchmen issue 3?" And I go, "Yeah, we'll talk about that for an hour and a half. I'm not doing anything." Like, get off the phone.
Holy shit. So everything has a meaning, and here we're going deep into the story, deep into Dr. Manhattan, which is one of my favourite characters. But just before we do, in terms of the show itself, please comment, please subscribe, obviously. Get in touch with us. Watching the Watchmen podcast, I think, is the email. I can't quite remember it, but it's on the thumbnail. Get in touch with us there and all that sort of stuff. But Def. So news in sort of Watchmen world. There was like a sequel that came out comic wise. Is that right?
Yeah. So this week, the graphic novel, The Flash / Batman the Button.
Right.
That's been released as a collection. It's sort of a sequel to Flashpoint more than it is Watchmen, I think. Basically what happens is, spoiler alert, Reverse Flash shows up to beat the crap out of Batman in the Batcave. Then he goes to another dimension. He comes back. The lad's on fire with the blue mist or whatever it is. The Dr. Manhattan. Right. And then Batman and the Flash travel to see what happened, and they go back to the Flashpoint universe, where Batman meets Thomas Wayne, who is his dad, who was Batman in the Flashpoint universe. Anyway, it's a bit of a time travel story. It's not amazing, but it's all right. It's kind of one. The bad thing is, like, Flashpoint ended on Batman dad giving him a letter, giving the letter to a Flash, who, when the Flash returned to the normal world, he gave it to Bruce.
Right.
I know I'm butchering this plot here.
It's all good.
But in the same way that they've ruined Watchmen, they've also ruined Flashpoint, because they've sent Batman back to meet his dad. So it's a nice little double header that they've managed to do there. They've killed 2 birds with 1 stone there, ruined 2 things. Well done, DC.
I need to check it out, actually, but I just can't. It's like,
have you read Flashpoint?
I'm aware that, like, Kevin Smith is a fan of it. That's all I really know.
Yeah, well, read Flashpoint. It acts as pretty an okay sequel to that. Basically what happens is Flash runs back in time. He stops his mother from being murdered, but with all time travel things, it messes up the present, and a couple of things get changed, like Superman gets captured by the government instead of landing on a farm in Kansas. Bruce gets shot instead of his parents. His mum becomes the Joker. His dad becomes Batman. There's just a couple of things like that, and it's sort of about Flash sort of setting things back to how they were.
That's sort of Alan Moore-esque in its kind of imaginings there.
Yeah.
The Joker as the mom, like, that is quite twisted.
Makes sense in the story.
Right.
Basically, she covers Bruce and just like sobbing, and then she starts like laughing. The one where they're sobbing. When women are sobbing and they start laughing, and then she turns around and Bruce's blood's like the way she's been holding Bruce, his blood's actually like covered her mouth in a smile, like sort of smile. So it sort of goes from there.
Okay.
But basically, he was saying that the tragedy sent Bruce's mother mental, and his father became Batman. You know, as you do.
Jesus. And I mean, in briefer Watchmen news, Damon Lindelof is doing like a TV show now, Watchmen.
Yeah. So he's obviously been checking out the podcast, and he thought, "Oh, this would be quite good to, adapt to TV." I've already ruined my TV career with Lost, so I'll just take a comic and just turn that into a TV show. It's already written, it's already filmed. I'll just do that. We'll just do it. He's probably just going to cut the movie up a bit, like that.
Yeah. I want to see it done because I'm a huge fan of the Fade Out. I don't know if anyone's read the Fade Out, Ed Brubaker. It's kind of like a 1940s Hollywood noir thing. But anyway, it's
all
got
you ever talk about every time I go, what comics you been reading? Oh, you should check the Fade Out.
Honestly, everyone needs to read that. That is true. I do.
Yeah. Are you getting money from Ed Brubaker?
Oh man, and Sean Phillips and Elizabeth Brightweiser. Great dude. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is like, the story's so tightly done, as with Watchmen as well, that it kind of makes sense as like a sort of 6-part series. Like, if it's just a faithful adaptation of all of these issues, it's going to be interesting at least.
Yeah, I mean, it probably won't be. It'd be good for newcomers, won't it?
Yeah.
Not going to be amazing for anyone who's read the comic and seen the movie.
No, especially if you read it, it wouldn't be,
and played the board game as well.
And downloaded the iPhone game on the App Store that was briefly available.
And another funny thing, the DC they've done a hat trick of ruining Watchmen this week. They released a story called The Doomsday Clock, in which I don't know, I haven't read it, but basically I watched a video where Jeff Johns went panel by panel explaining it, and he thought it was really clever because you know how the first issue of Watchmen starts out zoomed in on the badge and then kind of pulls out. Basically the comic starts on a someone holding up a picket sign with "The end is near," and it pulls out slowly. And it's like, so you see, in Watchmen, I think it's giving you a god's eye view because Dr. Manhattan is a god. So it starts zoomed in and pulls out. You're actually looking at it from a god's eye view. So I've tried to do that. And he was talking about how he had all these like hidden meanings and stuff. And it doesn't look like it's got any hidden meanings in it. Right. Jeff Johns is a really good writer. I don't want to slag the lad off, but he's ruined everything. Right. But... they went through like the first 5 pages, and basically there was a newspaper that had revealed that Ozymandias had, done this horrendous thing, and covered it up with a lie, and it was people marching on the White Building, and I don't know for definite, but I think Ozymandias kills himself at the end of the 5th page. They went in a room basically. The picketers, and is it a mob? It's a mob. They went in the room, right. And he had loads of X-rays up, and there was basically an X-ray that insinuated that Ozymandias had a brain tumor.
Right.
Yeah, just you don't just stuff that Alan Moore never put in the book. So I'm glad they're finally adding it all in.
Yeah, as you say, we're looking at the Alan Moore, the classic, obviously, this run and this issue as well, Watchmaker, which I guess we should get into issue 4. Obviously, check out all the previous episodes where we sort of recapped everything and gone in deep if you wanna check that stuff out. But I don't know about you, Dev, but for me, this is probably my favourite cover so far of the series. The photograph on Mars with the footprints.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? It's like little footprint, little photograph. Yeah, it's a nice little touching moment.
It's not clear when you first watch it. It could be a beach for when you first read it, but I mean, like obviously you learn he's on Mars quite quickly, and there's an odd existential dread about it that I love. There's sort of this it's a black and white photo it's clearly like the 50s, like the popcorn, and there's a balloon going away from where it's like burnt or something like that. It's kind of it's full of incredible detail. So you're on that level, you're sort of like, okay, there's this photo, and then you sort of, okay, there's a photo on Mars, and then then footprints, then like, you know, so there's someone here with the photo.
Yeah, no, that's quite clever. The lad looks quite worried in it.
Yeah,
like he's been caught cheating on his wife.
Yeah, it's kind of deranged. John Osterman, he looks kind of deranged there.
Yeah, he looks really worried that he's been caught with this woman. Anyway, don't bad.
Yeah, and it's just the attention to detail, the sort of the biodome that you see in the background there, which is kind of, you know, we've said before, like this Watchmen world is kind of slightly different from our sort of thing. And I mean,
what's crap is, right, that the bad thing about these days is you couldn't just replicate images when you were drawing. So Dave Gibbons literally would have had to draw this photo 1,000 times with that balloon. You can even see that balloon floating above the head. I bet he was sick of drawing that.
And you know, this Watchmen's so good at giving us that sort of inner stream of consciousness of the characters, and you know, Dr. Manhattan, his philosophy is teased at, but I think in this issue you really sort of learn who he is. The sense, even in those two opening panels where he's predicting into the future what he's actually going to be doing, it's really, really weird.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's sort of, well, it gives you straight away the perspective that he views time from, and everything is preordained. Similar to this turning of the cogs in a watch, everything has to happen in a certain way in order for the cogs to turn. And there's a repetition of falling in this issue as well. But it's just nice for him to have like this somber moment where he's just away from everything, and he's just looking back on his life, both physically through the photograph and also spiritually through time.
And the opening, the photograph in my hand of a man and a woman, they are at an amusement park in 1959. So, I mean, we learn again that this is him, but there is this kind of just this detached nature where that was him, but it was him in the past. You know, I mean, he's completely, you know, he's not this man anymore.
Well, there's a scientific theory that because the way that cells change within a human body, we're not even the same people that we were 10 years ago, like made of completely different things. But yeah, so he's sort of looking back. I mean, even as a person, I feel like completely different to the way I was 10 years ago. And if I didn't have my memories, I sort of don't think I'd be, you know, have all those horrific memories of the mental asylum. Right. But also, I wouldn't have like the knowledge that I've had a past life. Which is sort of what John's looking at this photo, imagining. Probably, he might not be. He might be thinking about, I wonder what Snoop Dogg's next Instagram post is going to be.
He already knows.
Yeah, he does.
He already knows all of them, and you know, the whole sequence. It's you know, the tight boxes that Gibbons does, the compactness of throughout Watchmen, really. But yeah. I think, you know, in this issue, the stars gleaming behind him as well, and just the kind of almost ridiculousness of this blue man on Mars. But it's very poetic. Yeah,
and it's a shame that he throws the photograph away, because he could do a great hashtag Throwback Thursday with that.
Yeah,
just whilst he's waiting for Snoop Dogg, but I digress. Yeah, it's just really nice, and he drops the photo and he walks away from it, because it's sort of at this moment that he accepts that he's done with humanity. He's on Mars. This is the last thing that was sort of holding him to his human self. Like he says in the last issue that it's the last it's the only photograph that people have, or it might even be this issue at his funeral. But this is sort of the thing that's holding him to humanity, and it's really symbolic that he drops it and just walks away from it.
Yeah. And all we ever see of stars of their old photographs is kind of almost, you know, year 9 GCSE poetry, but it's quite, I don't know, it's quite affecting, and it kind of is that an illusion for him? So he's saying that, okay, so the light from these stars is coming, you know, through a sort of vortex, or whatever, it's paused, but can he not see the light already? You know what I mean? How omnipotent is he?
I really don't know, but maybe it's sort of showing that the lights coming through and you're getting a glimpse of something, but there's nothing you can do about it. And in the same way that he's looking at a photograph of something that's happened, he's looking at the stars, something that's happened, and his entire life must be something that's already happened to him, because he's just unable to control influence it in any way, in the same way that he can see the stars but he can't influence them. I'm trying to get a point across here, but I'm finding it really difficult to word. So basically everything's set in stone, but all we can do is look at it, in the same way that all he can do is look at this photograph, all he can do is look at the stars. He's going to have no impact on it. He means nothing. Everyone means nothing. Life's pointless, and when you die, there's nothing.
And the second page, which has the title on it, is incredibly framed. So you have sort of, if you were to imagine like a 5 on a dice, like you have those sort of, that Dr. Manhattan is zooming out from him, and you realise in this sort of dark expanse of space. But the other 3 are hands. And there's two Dr. Manhattan hands, blue hands, throwing the photo, and there's one John Osterman hand, like picking up a small cog of a watch. Like, it's delicious imagery, isn't it?
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah.
And just the repetition of the falling throughout this issue. We get the repetition of the photograph falling mixed in with the cogs.
Yeah.
And his father.
You didn't need to throw the cogs, man.
Yeah. And it sort of ties into the bombs that are going to fall eventually. So yeah, it's a nice repetition thematically throughout it. His dad seems a bit mental. He comes in the next page and reads about Hiroshima and Einstein saying that time is relative, and he just decides, what, sod this. I know I've been making a living off fixing watches, but I'm just going to throw them over the balcony.
I love Professor Einstein says that time differs from place to place. Can you imagine if time is not true? What purpose have watchmakers hein? And he says as well. So it's kind of, there's this nice nationality to it. And him standing on this very sort of like, I don't know, working class like sky porch.
Yeah, and it's mirrored by Dr. Manhattan standing in his palace.
Amazing.
Watching the atmosphere of Mars, where meteorites hail down and they're rarefied. And it's really well put together.
It is, and we follow John, his kind of origin here, which is what these early issues do so well. And we meet him in a kind of, because at this point superheroes kind of exist, I guess, with the Minutemen to a certain extent, but in a very superhero type place, isn't it? This origin, it's like man becoming beast. It's got to be like a science facility.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of the Incredible Hulk TV show,
right?
From the 70s, where it's he's doing a science experiment and then he gets locked in it by accident, and he gets blasted with gamma rays, and he becomes this amazing superhero man. Going to save the world, kids. Make sure you check out the next episode.
There's some crazy transitions, like in the fifth.
I'm sorry, I'm getting weirder and weirder as the episodes go on.
In the start of the 5th page, when you see him looking in as a freshman, essentially, a beer's being poured, and then it just cuts to him and the stars outside, and he's like this kind of alien man, like incredible to me.
Yeah, and I suppose it sort of is how Dr. Manhattan would traverse through time. I don't think he would exist in the moment, every single moment. What would happen is he'd go somewhere, and that would trigger a memory that would take him back to a point in his life, which might be why it's mirrored so often. For instance, when he's walking in the bar in the 1950s, he's then walking in the bar in the 1985, and maybe these things are just triggering memories for him, and he's able to go back and relive them as if they're happening now, because his being's perfect, so his memory doesn't have any faults in it. And maybe he's just, he's walking along and then you remember. It's a bit like a flashback from Family Guy, where they say something and then it flashes to a joke that relives it. Maybe Dr. Manhattan is the prototype for Family Guy.
but potentially, and you see John as well as already kind of superhuman, even before he became so. Like she says, like, "Oh, you're pretty young for a research scientist," and he's a high achiever. To a certain extent, so I guess like a Bruce Banner as well. I guess someone more educated, and again, just flitting through time. She buys me a beer, the first time a woman has ever done this for me. As she passes me the cold, perspiring glass, our fingers touch. Alan Moore is a terrific writer at just capturing these kind of intense hush moments, and then him just going into making love, and she's tearless of anger 3 years later, and the photograph lies at my feet. Like repetition, as you say, the kind of the TikTok nature of it is just very powerful.
Yeah, and it's all present tense as well. So it's always in the moment. It's not like we went to. It's like we are at the amusement park.
Yeah.
She passes me, not she passed. And it's just keeping you in the moment throughout. And I find it really engaging to read because of that, to be honest. You're constantly in the moment. So no matter what's happening on... there's a sense of urgency to it because it's happening right now throughout this entire issue. And it's great how even when he walks into the bar as a normal man, he sort of gets a sense of deja vu, which you would because himself in the future is traveling back and being in that consciousness of his time. I've sort of always kind of had this view of time myself, where it's all cyclical. But humans are hardwired to view it in its linearity. But, everything that will happen has to happen because everything that has happened in order to set up it so that time arrives at its eventuality. It's sort of, tying into the issue, it's sort of like a clock without a craftsman, where everything is just constantly spinning and you don't really, it's all in motion. Like everything in your life that has happened has built up to you being right here, right now, recording this crappy podcast. So there'll be some point in your life where you had to do this thing, where you had to watch battle raps because battle raps would lead on to you doing a podcast, which would lead on to you doing the crappy watching the Watchmen podcast. And it's sort of everything ties into everything and has to happen the way it has to happen because of its eventuality, if that makes sense. I went on a bit of a rant there, but yeah, I do kind of relate to this. I know that Alan Moore also thinks the same way, because if you read From Hell, there's a lot of moments in that where Jack the Ripper sees the future. There's one point where he's just walking past an alleyway in London and he looks in a window and there's just a man there sitting from the 70s, like the 1970s, watching TV, and they both just kind of look at each other like shocked. And I think there's a point as well where Jack walks into a modern day Trafalgar Square. And it's really good that Moore's sort of established this character that embodies his beliefs almost. And I really relate to it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's just effortless storytelling, which is what Moore can do. He's so concise. He's got such quality. Like, one of the things I want to turn any readers onto, and I want to pick this up. Have you ever heard of Future Shocks?
Hello? Sorry.
Hey, can you hear me, man?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Future Shocks in comics?
No.
It's like... It was something for 2000 AD, and it was like their early writers, like Neil Gaiman came up for it, and loads of other guys as well. And it's just like one-page comics. And Alan Moore was apparently like the master of these. And there is actually a collection you can get on Amazon, which I really need to pick up. And they need to sponsor us as well. Go for the affiliate link. But Alan, he just does it so well. And on page 6 at the bottom. We have the love making that we've mentioned before. You have all these things that I mentioned before that are coming back. Even the focus on the old style camera and them posing for the photo that we see on the cover, and we see kind of like a faded version of it first, and then the actual reality. It's really rich.
Yeah, and I actually do have in my notes that this entire issue just works as a standalone story.
Yeah,
I mean, you could just pick it up and it works brilliantly.
That's true.
There's actually DC have released a comic called Love is Love, which is all just one-page stories centered around the Florida shooting of a gay club, and it's all sort of discussing people's lives and how there's stories about people coming out and people getting murdered at the nightclub, and it's a really good, really good read. So definitely pick that up if you like these sort of one shot things.
That's cool. I definitely will check that out. But we have inevitably the transformation for Dr. Manhattan. He goes through into the thick glass that we saw preview prior. And it's the sense of sheer horror that I think Gibbons captures. You look at these faces that are seen, through the radiated glass. Like, they are just like the pit of despair.
Oh, yeah, and the colours used on them is absolutely fantastic. Like, the green. It's sort of a almost like a 1940s horror movie green, if that makes sense. Like, sort of slime, and it's really, I'm a website designer in trade, and we've been sort of the new company I work for at the moment, we've been discussing a lot of colors and what colors mean on a website. So red obviously means alert, green sort of means to go, and the use of color is a very important thing to give you emotion. So the fact that they're horrified and they're in dark green, it's a very emotional thing of just sheer terror that sort of harkens back to those old horror movie posters. And then the entire color gets stripped away when Dr. Manhattan gets sort of obliterated.
Yeah, the infuse of color and just the sort of, I agree, the sort of quite sepia sort of way it delivers itself as well, and then into a kind of ejaculation pause of emotion visually on page 8, the explosion of John, the kind of incineration of him, backdrop to him holding the watch as well is such a beautiful thing. But I love his transformations. I especially love on the following page the sort of brain and synapse John.
Yeah, and what, like, it has to be put in every single hero origin is that not normal, this couldn't happen to a normal person and they could get through it. Like, what's great about this is you learn that John used to be a watchmaker. So if Janie had stumbled in there and had got obliterated, she wouldn't be able to get the powers of Dr. Manhattan because she wouldn't be able to rebuild herself piece by piece in the same way that John had when he was a watchmaker. So it's good that they sort of put this rule in very subtly that Russia couldn't just copy and make their own Dr. Manhattan. It's the same with like Captain America and the super serum, the super soldier serum, which got destroyed after he got made. And there needs to be certain rules that stop normal people from becoming these heroes, so there's not just millions of them walking around. So it's nice that they subtly put this in. It also looks a bit like an ink blot test as well.
Yeah.
Sort of ties into Rorschach, and I think when Rorschach gets killed later, spoiler alert by the way, they sort of harken back to this.
Yeah, and
they do it. Yeah, they do it. So when Dr. Manhattan goes to stop Ozymandias, and Ozymandias obliterates him, it harkens back to this heavily. It's pretty much the same image, but it's got Bubastis in it.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And we see him as a circulatory system, and just the sort of the skeleton, the skin building. Ever here are the cogs as well. On page 10, we have Manhattan, the birth of him. Quite obvious overtones of sort of godlike here, isn't there?
Yeah, everyone's just shitting themselves, and then he sort of appears floating above them, arms stretched out, completely nude. Sort of harkens back to like Michelangelo's statue. Is it David, his statue?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's he's perfectly built anatomically, and he's floating above these people. There's cutlery flying everywhere. No one knows what to do with the lad. It's God. He's here. Bam, yeah. I'm here. Check out my dick.
Yeah, and you know that I really like the panel of Janie, actually, sort of the wind blowing her back, and she's sort of sheepishly asking. You know, she sort of knows instantly that it is him, which is quite intriguing. And you know, it's great that God debuts not at a church or a sort of oasis, amongst scientists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amongst critiques.
Yeah, exactly, and they're just completely like astounded by it as well. It's sort of the second coming is here. Oi, scientist, what you been doing slagging off the Bible? I'm here. You know what I mean? The lad's here, and he's blue. Dabba dee, dabba die. I think that it's, you know how it's a shame. Tangent here. You know how at the end of every issue they quote a song. It's a shame that I'm blue, dabba dee, dabba die wasn't out, because that would have been the perfect quote for this issue.
They use Einstein actually in this issue, but I think that
which
equally,
is a shame.
yeah. And we see the early life of John and Janie, which is obviously fraught. How can you live, you know, with someone like this? And they're celebrating Christmas, quite a superficial thing, for him really, but he's still doing it, I guess.
Yeah, which, you know, everyone, and by everyone I mean just me on this podcast, says that Dr. Manhattan's totally detached from humanity. But just from the fact that he lies to her, it does show that he cares. Like, if he didn't care, he wouldn't lie to her. When he's talking about how he'll always want her, even though she knows deep down, you know, the relationship's never going to work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, it needs a trial run. We see later on that equally it doesn't work. I always want you. I'll always want you, he says. This man who knows infinity is playing these lines. Yeah,
well, it shows he cares. I mean, it's the old classic one, innit? Your wife's pregnant. You know you're going to... as soon as the new secretary starts at work, you're off. Right. But you tell your wife, oh, yeah, I'll always be here for you and the kids.
You know, to even say the sentence, I don't think there is a God. If there is, I'm not him. So it's like, you know, I don't, you know, just questioning, beautiful, you know, ideas that he puts out there. And again, moving forward, Dr. Manhattan, you know, is co-opted in a certain sense to be a hero. Obviously, the ambivalence was there beginning, and you know, so much is laboured over in the origin story, the logo, the look, but for him, he purely just sort of just does it in momentarily.
But yeah, it's weird how he's sort of been used as a propaganda piece, to be honest. I don't think America care about his feelings at all. They're just more bothered about the fear that he's going to put into Russia and America's enemies. And that's why they kind of want to build him as a brand.
And just the wonderful irony that the front of the newspaper that he was shown as a child is kind of, it evokes what his moniker is. Yeah.
So the Manhattan Project was basically when scientists created the atomic bomb. And it's clear that, you know, the fact that Dr. Manhattan's called Dr. Manhattan is what's caused Russia to fear another atomic strike, which is probably why they've stockpiled so many weapons. And it just, like, the fact that Alan Moore's thought of the character's name and how it plays, like, every character in this book has a name that sort of plays into their origin in depth, like Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, obviously the name's synonymous with atomic war. And it's just really, you know, he's thinking on another level here, the lad. He's a bit like myself when I was talking about time before.
Yep. Just the power that we see, and beautifully we're seeing it for a TV screen. You know, we're not kind of just showing him in the moment here. We're sort of reliving a highlights reel. Here's him assembling a gun at eye level. Here's him, you know, nuking a tank. Like, you know, they sort of... It's such a glorious display. And I love how they interview Captain Metropolis, who just looks very bemused.
Yeah, the lad looks scared shitless. He looks like them scientists before. What I've actually been thinking about is, I don't know if Dr. Manhattan actually has, like, proper superpowers.
Right.
What I think it is, right, because they were talking about the science chamber was used to see if things had an intrinsic field, and if they did, if it was possible to separate it. Obviously, what happened to John was he got removed from his intrinsic field, which caused him to disintegrate and disperse. What I think Dr. Manhattan's actual power is that he can just move things intrinsically. So when he's dismantling objects, all he's doing is displacing their intrinsic field. It's never really said in the book. I've not Googled it or anything, so if there is something where Alan Moore says, whoever says intrinsic fields is what Dr. Manhattan's power is a dickhead. I don't know that. It's just I know the lad was testing for intrinsic fields. You know what I'm saying, my man?
No, I dig you, homie. I dig you. And
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan is said not to have spoken to the press. So we move, therefore, very elegantly in the sense of an interview, instead of a program, to talking to the costume heroes remaining from the 1940s masked hero fad that they mentioned here. And he says, very, very pleased, but clearly is caught in the spotlight. We see Silk Spectre, Sally Jupiter underneath in the brackets. We're seeing, we kind of go back, and he just like him saying at the end, I feel as if I've been here all the time. I guess your sense of that would overpower any non-knowledge you had, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And just I love the way that he's going around murdering people in one panel, and he's just like, the morality of my activities escapes me. The guy doesn't care. He's just going through the motions to sort of please America. I mean, he clearly knows John F. Kennedy's going to get shot. He doesn't care. And he's just... what I love about Moore is he's got a very dry sense of humour. So when Dr. Manhattan's talking to the original Night Owl at the award ceremony, the original Night Owl says, well, I'm going to go retire and just fix cars. Dr. Manhattan, because you've made me redundant. Like, Night Owl just feels completely pointless now that he's met Dr. Manhattan. So he even says it'll be a while before even you affect General Motors. And then and Dr. Manhattan goes, well, the new electric car should be even simpler. And he just sort of once again makes them completely irrelevant, unintentionally. And it's just it's just a great dry sense of humor that Moore has, and he's endowed this completely just stoic character with this great sense of humor that's completely unintentional.
And you just see the division in these eras. Him saying, Hollis saying, all I've got to offer is a good left hook, which means fuck all in like space combat. Yeah,
exactly. This lad's blue. Dabba die.
And I like the earlier ones as well, just where you see him, those 3 panels. You see him at the Red Cross event that Ozzy throws. It gets mentioned throughout, but it's never, it's always in there. But you see Mothman there, you see Captain Metropolis, you see
this. It's quite a big moment throughout the comics. That thing, like a lot of big things happen there.
Definitely, and you get to see Dr. Manhattan blowing up someone's head.
Yeah, lovely. The lad doesn't care. You've got what's that lad called with the pointy ears?
Oh, Moloch.
You've got Moloch there pointing. Yeah, I should have read Moloch in the box there before saying what's that lad with the pointy ears.
If you're a true fan, you got your Moloch on lock, man. You got Moloch.
And Moloch down.
You see JFK and you see Jackie, and it's just like, I don't know about you, Def, but like American history, there's something quite romantic about JFK, I guess.
Yeah, and it's weird how like often he gets used in fiction as well.
Always,
because the guy got murdered on camera.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? If they did something like where I'm trying to think of a murder victim without being really offensive, but that in itself shows that what's happened to JFK has just become completely detached from the reality of it. Like, this guy got assassinated on live TV. And it's used in fiction all the time because no one cares. think of someone famous who got murdered recently.
Who got murdered recently?
Colonel Gaddafi.
Gaddafi? Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Well, imagine that was on TV all the time and loads of stuff.
Yeah, that would be. No, you're right, and it gets pulled
and
throughout.
You know what? I think the Twin Towers is sort of starting to become a bit like that, where people are sort of detached from it and fictionalize it. Like, if you watch the start of Batman v Superman, like that is 9/11.
Right.
Like the fact that it's got superheroes flying around doesn't really make that much of a difference, and it is very strange that JFK's assassination has become just used as a plot point for a lot of things.
Always, man. I mean, he died young. He's just idealized, anything from X-Men First Class to, fucking, Watchmen. Like, it's great. Of course, it's great to see him. And we see in the sort of, he died, and then moving forward from this as well. And the first meeting of these people, it's not quite clear why necessarily Dr. Manhattan Squeeze would be there, but she's there anyway. And
she's just hanging around.
I mean, yeah, why not? Just like, there's not Wi-Fi back then, so it's, just something to do. But what was this meeting as well? Very important, wasn't it, for kind of what the sort of formation of the league?
Yeah, definitely. And it's just it's great that they keep harkening back to these moments. Like, if you wrote down on paper how many different things happen in Watchmen, there's not that many, especially for a book this length, but it's shown you from everyone's perspective, so you get more of an in-depth understanding of the situation that they're in, and in doing so you also see it from their perspective, so you get an in-depth understanding of the character as well. And it's a really great way to just constantly play up these scenarios, because it offers something new every single time you look at it as well. One of the great things I think about Inception is every time I watch that film, I see something different, and it's very hard to do, especially when you're used to seeing the same scenarios over and over. And the fact that Moore has these same scenarios, whatever, but there's something different happening in them every time, and not only makes you understand what is going on a little bit more, but it also makes you understand the character.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, here we see Night Owl leaving as well in his kind of owl machine, and just I agree. Snatches of conversations are said that okay, you see the whole thing in another issue. We see Dr. Manhattan's hands, on Silk Spectre's face there, and which we've seen before. We see them kissing as well. The smaller, gentler kiss upon the other one, like a signature. Again, it's just very florid, but very nice.
Yeah.
And it just again, the man's kind of isolation from this moment as well. There's a lot of sort of romantic intrigue, I suppose, which is kind of grounds it.
And do you think the way that sort of Dr. Manhattan's detached from JFK's assassination is sort of a comment on how the world's become detached from that assassination?
Potentially.
John Lennon got assassinated. Imagine if that became like a plot point in loads of different films. Like Yoko Ono would have to watch some of them. You know what I mean? When she's seeing her husband getting gunned down, like Jackie Kennedy, she's had basically probably one of the most horrific moments of her life, probably the most horrific moment, sitting in a car watching her husband getting shot, and it gets fictionalized so much and used so much as a cool moment in like TV shows and films that it's sort of we became detached from it in the same way that Dr. Manhattan has, and maybe this higher perspective that he has is sort of the perspective that the media paints in things, or maybe I'm just talking out my arse.
Yeah, no. As you were saying that, and I was listening, I just watched the JFK Assassination. I haven't seen it in a while. Fuck, man, it's gruesome.
Yeah, it's horrendous, but
it's really
it gets
bad.
used in so many things.
Yeah, it's just...
Like if you watch, like, I think it's called 22/11/63, that entire TV show is set around James Franco going back and stopping JFK from getting assassinated.
How is that? I haven't actually seen that.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. I cried at the end of it.
Really?
So
Oh, okay.
really, really good. Yeah, really good.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Definitely. Yeah.
And
It's based on a Stephen King
yeah,
book,
yeah,
so you
yeah, yeah.
know that.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be a big fan. And we see him speaking to Nixon. We see him meeting Comedian. More importantly, happier times for Comedian with his lady.
Yeah, so she's smiling there.
Yep.
It's the same bar. Same bar she gets murdered in, but everyone's just having a laugh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a few. I mean, if you look in the back, the guy at the door in that scene looks like the most typical Vietnam guy ever.
Yeah, he's got that. He's got like the Halloween costume on that people had. When people go to a party and they're like, "I want to go as a Vietnam soldier." You know the party.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
They have the toga party on a Sunday and they have the Vietnam soldier party on a Monday. He's got a costume from that.
Well, and then we see Comedian again with his flamethrower, a freeze frame, essentially a zoom in, and the kind of the something very tragic and broken, but also very clever. That the fact that Dr. Manhattan he understands no one, but Comedian, his motives he gets.
Yeah, well, he's got a God's eye perspective on things, as Jeff Johns would say. He's sort of above everything and above all the morality and the understanding. Like, I'm going to get political now, but there's so much hypocrisy within the government. Like, the government will say it's wrong to murder someone, yet they'll happily sanction people like soldiers to go abroad and murder people by the thousands. And yet, if Jimmy from down the road, he's a bit of a funny lad. He likes to stare out the window watching the women pass. If he goes out one night and murders a woman, all hell's gonna fucking break loose. Yeah, the government's gonna be like, you can't do that, Jimmy. We've had a word with you. But on the same day, the government will send people out to murder people. So they're saying murder's wrong in one way, but doing it themselves. And we do live in a very hypocritical society. I just think murder's wrong all round, yeah? So I haven't been hanging around with Jimmy or anything. But like the Columbine shooting, I remember there was a statistic on that. Bill Clinton, the morning of the Columbine shooting was like, oh, these guys have done a terrible thing. You should never kill people. The same day, he was sending jets to the Middle East to bomb countries and kill people. Like, it's just completely hypocritical, Tom, and I'm bloody sick of it. But the comedian seems to understand that. He sees it all as a big joke. And Dr. Manhattan can see that, he knows the same thing. So, yeah, it's just... I think the comedian and Dr. Manhattan probably have the most in common out of everyone in this comic.
Certainly. And again, we get a full profile Dr. Manhattan, him destroying things with a finger. This is the first time we've really seen him Ant-Man himself up, grow to a huge size. Of course he can do this. He could become a planet if he wanted to, god damn it. Like, that would be, I don't know, maybe if he could do that, but he could do a lot of things, and to the point where people are surrendering to him like a genuine god.
Yeah, well, he's a deity, isn't he, really?
Yeah.
And, his legend, the fact that his power has no limit, they're just scared, and, a lot of religion comes from fear.
Yeah, and it works well. We get to see inside Ozzy's sort of snow palace as well. It's just a credit to the creative work of these guys, isn't it? All the locations are very unique and interesting.
Yeah, and it's really well planned out. Like the snow base pops up over and over, and it's sort of a callback to Carmack. And it's just Moore's thought about every single aspect of these characters. Like, where would they hang out? Why would they do that? What in their past would make them build? How would the interior look? And it's all sort of ties in to paint a picture of how the character is. Like, if someone lives is a superhero, yet they live in a dark, dank apartment, it sort of speaks volumes about their personal life. And in the same way that Ozymandias has this huge palace, it speaks volumes to his ego as well.
Yeah, entirely. And just seeing inside it as well, these fresh flowers and these kind of Egyptian columns and the art, and it's delightful as well. The tease of the dome, and they're speaking about the future, and they're again, Dr. Manhattan kind of playing a house guest to a certain extent, still working within these sociological confines. We then see him levitating with sand in his hand, like kind of elevating. I've always loved in this section when you see him sort of trying to fight crime, which obviously he was never really that hot on. That guy shouting, "Oh yeah, and what if we don't, you big blue fruit?"
Yeah,
What a line!
Yeah, it perfectly captures like the voice of citizens as well. Yeah. He drops a, I don't really want to say it on the podcast. He says, I don't really like the word, but he says, "My son was a police officer, you faggot."
Right.
And that's sort of, he's got a great like ear for dialogue and capturing what people are saying.
Yeah, no, entirely. And the mob framed in red, the face is beautiful. Laurie just kind of doing what she can do in the moment, but Dr. Manhattan floating above, detached. Him transporting everyone. I mean, it's not different to the whole television debacle, right?
Yeah, well, it's sort of how he deals with all of his problems by the looks of it. I mean, I don't want to slag the lad off, but he did just run away to Mars. Yeah. And now he's sort of just, he doesn't deal with problems well. He just sort of shuffles them out the way and to one side. The lad's a bit of a dickhead now, I'm thinking about this.
The Senator Keene is mentioned. We get the sort of almost Days of Future Past like poster of their faces like crossed out and stuff. The sand playing through the hands of the pictures of comedian coming off the plane, which are very sort of classic Americana, like JFK, that have been warped slightly by this idea.
It's weird that that's a thing in America, like people stepping off the plane.
Yeah, it's huge.
I just seen Donald Trump do it on the news the other day as well. And I was thinking, like, I don't know why. Like, as soon as they step off the plane, they start walking down the steps and waving at people. I mean, it's a very weird iconography, but it's present here. It symbolises America heavily, and the fact that the comedian's also doing it sort of shows that, he is America.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, him freeing these people as well. I believe it. Yeah, it says it was from the Iranian hostage situation, which is he's wearing his GIMP mask at this portion as well. His costume, changes. We learn about Night Owl retiring. Obviously, Rorschach is still active. We heard this mentioned before, didn't we, with the Never stapled to the chest?
Yeah, brilliant. It's just completely defiant. He's not compromising. The lad's still out there. He can sort of. He's not doing it as a job. It's not something that he can stop doing. It's just, this is Rorschach. It'd be like telling a fish to stop swimming, you know what I mean? The lad, this is his existence, and he's not going to stop because some government tell him not to.
I just can't believe that on these pages, these 24 and 25, right towards the end, the sort of confluence of timelines is really like meshing, and pretty much every panel is leaping decades and back and forth and realities, and like it's dizzying.
Yeah, and there's a certain tempo to this issue as well, that slowly starts to build up. It's almost like, have you seen Dunkirk?
I haven't actually, no.
Right, so throughout Dunkirk, and even in the soundtrack, there's sort of I think it might be present in Interstellar as well, there's sort of a tick, 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 tick. And a lot of Christopher Nolan's work feels like a clock almost. And you sort of have throughout this issue a tick, tick, and it's as it's getting towards this build-up, the tick gets faster and faster as the pages come closer and closer together. And then when Dr. Manhattan, when it cuts to him at Mars, you just have vast expanses without the tick. So if you imagine every single panel is the stroke of a watch, it really starts to speed up at this point. And as it's speeding up, it's also jumping decades and decades, and thematically, it's such a well-structured issue that you're really engrossing. And the fact that it's, this story is about a watchmaker and it operates almost like time is great.
Yeah, it is incredible from seeing him deep blue, getting ready for the TV. Laurie leaving the special talent quarters, the funeral, then being told of comedian's death. The photo yet again. it plays out so well, and then we sort of end on a very, kind of Watchmen. I guess you could argue to a certain extent has been quite grounded so far, but with Dr. Manhattan, of course, you have to kind of go out these boundaries. Him creating this kind of giant crystal world from Mars. How do you read this?
I don't know. Like, it seems to be a giant watch, to be honest. It's got like hands on it, but I've never really understood it, to be honest. The thing with these issues, I've not actually researched any Watchmen.
Right.
I've just read it and sort of said on the podcast what I think it means. So I never know if I'm right or wrong with it. But when it comes to moments like this, and I've got no idea what's going on, I sound like even more of an idiot than I normally do. So yeah, I've got absolutely no idea.
Yeah, he just, I guess, he is just kind of playing, again, creator with what he can do. But yeah, I don't know actually the meaning behind him creating this giant fortress. But, besides some allegorical one, like, narratively wise, I don't think there's anything. Obviously, this is kind of his domain to a certain extent where it exists. Again, we get that, great shot of the black cogs against the against the yellow now, which kind of gives it just a bit of a diffidence there as it's kind of growing up. And just to end with him yet again watching something falling, and the meteor shower as well, which just kind of places you in this really extraterrestrial world.
Yeah, and it's nice how he sort of says, the world grows around me, am I shaping it, or do its predetermined contours guide my hand? And he talks about how everything in his life's built up to this moment. Like, if the fat man hadn't crushed the watch, if I hadn't left it in the test chamber, I to blame then, or the fat man, or my father for choosing my career? Which one of us is responsible? Who makes the world? It's very poetic, and he's sort of away from everything now, realizing that it's a clock without a craftsman. Perhaps the world is not made, perhaps nothing is made, perhaps it simply is, has been, and will always be there. And it's just it's great to see how he views the world. Yeah,
entirely. And we close with, not a lyric, unfortunately not I'm Blue either. Albert Einstein...
Which Dr. Manhattan would know if he could see the future.
That's, I think he'd have that as his...
Maybe that's why he turned himself blue.
Because I guess he would have predicted it at that time. He would have known that would have came. So yeah, that makes sense. And Albert Einstein saying that, basically he regrets splitting the atom, changing everything, releasing this power. If only I had known, I should have become a watchmaker.
Yeah, great, brilliant.
Which is
don't know how Moore's done all this.
No, it's such a mix.
Yeah, he's such a genius.
He is.
Especially when he's left DC and then Jeff Johns comes along and he's like, so it's a God's eye view, you know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, mate, I've read Watchmen, so what you're talking about now is absolute nonsense in comparison to that. Right. Get off.
Yeah, no, Alan Moore, for me, he's one of my heroes, like, in terms of writing and like creatively.
He could just be making up this quote, because every quote seems to be like absolutely perfect.
His research game is just, out of this world. And we end with
pre-internet as well. It's free.
Yeah, he just knew. He's a wildly intelligent guy. And the final, though, the sort of the Dr. Manhattan superpowers and the superpowers, which is very witty, and seeing him as the Vitruvian Man with the flag, and it's a brilliant cover. Actually, it's kind of like a classic sort of cover. But sort of what he says in it, isn't much said in this really. He just sort of reiterates the point how deadly Dr. Manhattan is and how important he is. But it's not like a sort of Hollis Mason under the hood where you learn a lot more really.
Nah, it's probably the weakest out of the back issues. Let's look like the story segments.
Yeah.
You've got the news reporters talking about how he was misquoted. He didn't say that the Superman exists and that he's American. He actually said was God exists and he's American. Which, look, I've read the book. He doesn't say that. He says the first thing that he says he didn't say, so that's a load of crap. But yeah, I don't really like this that much.
No.
And it's sort of talking about how just basically how contradictory the world it is, like how there's children starving, whilst boots that cost thousands of dollars walk on the moon. We prepare for war yet await peace, and it's just talking about how contradictory humans are in general. And it's just like it's sort of the perspective of a news reporter that we get to see for 2 panels or something. So I'm not that invested in this story.
No, I concur, man. Yeah, it's not. But the issue's so. I mean, it's. I think I said to you before, like, you know, it's one of my favourite bits of graphic novel ever. Like, you know, I think just from a storytelling perspective, I think it's absolutely pitch perfect. A fascinating character, you know, treated correctly with the whole watch stuff running through, and you know, it's just. I mean, any closing thoughts on this issue, Def?
It's a home run, isn't it? Like, it's absolutely brilliant. I often find this with TV shows where, you know, the first episode's okay, the second episode's okay, the third episode's okay, and it's normally about the fourth that the writers sort of save all their best ideas for. And right. I mean, it happened with Jessica Jones. I'm thinking about that most recently, and a lot of TV shows do this, where the fourth episode's something where they really just hit it home and everything falls into place and it gets into its stride. And I think this is where the book really elevates, and you can sort of begin to understand all the ideas that Moore has within it. It would be weird to kind of go back in time and sort of read this issue by issue, month by month, because I don't know how people would have, you know, picked up on the first 3 issues. I know for a fact that I definitely would have just missed all of the stuff. But I think this would have been the issue that sort of began to get into how everything worked within the clock, within the story. Like, you do realize that everything's a clock and it's all sort of preordained, and everything's slowly fitting together and building towards something. And it's just an absolute masterpiece. Dr. Manhattan is, from this issue alone, one of the most fascinating characters in comics.
Yeah, I mean, him and Aquaman, they're top 2.
Yeah, I love how Aquaman started going, "My man," in the Justice League trailers. "My man," because I've just started watching Rick and Morty as well.
Oh, right.
And there's a postman in that who just goes, "My man." So it's good that DC's taking it seriously.
And I mean, this was issue 4. You know, we're a third of the way through. There's so much detail. These are incredible pieces of work, and it's been a joy, man. I guess your website. How do people get at that?
Yeah, so if you go to definition.co.uk, that's my website. I'm a bit ill at the moment. My voice is a bit croaky, so you know, do us a favour, visit the website. That'll cheer us up. I'm currently reviewing the Justice League New 52 run, which sort of is building towards Forever Evil, which is when supervillains took over the world and defeated the Justice League. And Lex Luthor and the lads, they had to stop them. So really good run. I've just started reading Death Note, and that's, I cannot believe how good that is.
Wow.
I've never really, I've heard about Death Note in the past, but you know, I sort of thought it was a bit of a stupid idea. But reading it, it's absolutely incredible. Like, it's one of the only books I've reviewed and given a 10 out of 10. So I definitely recommend picking that up.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah,
What about you? What are you?
The fade out. No, I think I might have mentioned this before, but the way I sort of read comics is more, I'll just read like writers that I like rather than like stuff. So Jason Aaron, who's someone that I fucking love. Southern Bastards. I'm sure some people might be aware of this from Image. It's basically it's like a deep fried noir crime sort of. It's taking like the you know like these small towns that love college football and like they have to win every game. Like, it's taking that idea, but it's making it into like sort of crime story. Right. It's really fucking good, man. there's it's all about the games and stuff, and like I think it's like the second arc, like it spends like 6 issues, and each issue is just with a character, and then the final issue is like at this game, and all the characters are there and like trying to kill this guy. It's really good, honestly. The writing's really good. So yeah, check out Southern Bastards, listeners, but obviously keep listening to us as well. You know, obviously me and Def have done loads of Battle Rap Resume stuff. We'll do some stuff in the future, but obviously this sort of stuff, we will come back and do something non-Watchmen, I think, soon, man.
Yeah, I think mid-season break, issue 6, we'll probably go off and we'll review a different graphic novel.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about bits and bobs that we could do, but we haven't exactly, you know, specified a project. So if there's a graphic novel that you want us to break down, make sure you email at whatever the email is. What's watching the Watchmen at thewatchmen.com.co.uk. You know better than me. Well, tell you what, tweet either me or Tom. You can get at me at definitionmc, and you can get at Tom at watchingthewatchmen@gmail.com.
That's it. That's the one. At Battle Rap Resume as well. But yeah, at will be on the description as well if you want to send us a message. Get in touch with us, please. We wanted some emails to read out. Like I do a few other podcasts, and if you ain't got an email in the first 4 episodes, like you're slacking, boy. I'm a little bit ashamed. So we'll get one, even if it is me as an acronym. We are going to go through. But Def, as always, this has been a treat, man. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, mate. Make sure you ring us next month, and we'll talk about issue 5.
We will, and dear listeners, if you happen to catch that, we'll do it sooner rather than later. We realise it's been kind of a long break, but we'll be doing that within a little bit. But Def, as always, man, thank you, bro.
Take care, my man.